My name is Chris Haug, and I'm the director of Startup Grind Maryland. And Startup Grind Maryland is one of more than 625 chapters within the largest independent global community of innovators, creators, founders, startups, and companies in more than 140 countries. We currently have about 5 million plus or minus community members spread around the world. And for those of you who may not know about Startup Grind as a global organization, um, our mission is very simple. We're here to educate, inspire, and connect our community members with the resources that they need to have the best opportunities to go as far in their entrepreneurship journey as possible. And we live by three very simple core values. We give first, we don't take. We help others before we help ourselves, and we look for every way possible to make friendships and collaborate and make partnerships and not practice this typical zero-sum games. And a little bit about Startup Grind Maryland. We cover the entire state of Maryland, and our goal is to be a welcoming and open statewide community and resource for anybody within the state of Maryland that has an interest in technology, innovation, and startups. And before we get started, I would like to say a special thanks to our global and our local sponsors. Um, on a global level, that's American Express and Dell Computers. On a regional and local level, it's TEDCO, who is Maryland's quasi-state public-private partnership for the entrepreneurship community, as well as Connectpreneur, which is the largest independent investor community in the nation, Founder Institute, as well as 360 Venture Management Group and Atlantis Capital Partners. And with that, like I said, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Welcome, everyone. And at this point in time, I would like to introduce Mr. Connor Boundy and Mr. Luke Pillarella. And they are part of our Web3 production and management team. And they are the ones who are going to lead tonight's podcast and event. So, gentlemen, welcome. Good to see you again. And the floor is all yours.
Thank you, as always, for kicking us off, Chris. And everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to episode 7 of Bridging the Gap to Web3. My name is Connor Boundy. I am one of the co-founders here at Atlantis Capital. I'm here with one of our other co-founders, Luke Pillarella. And man, we are pumped to chat with you all today. I can't believe we have 6 episodes behind us. We're about to start number 7. And before I jump into things, I have to give a huge thank you to all of our partners and sponsors that make this series even possible. So bear with me because the list is getting long, which is good to see. So huge shout out to Startup Guides, Safe Haven, Dominant Creative, VChain, Mad V Apes, MetaJuice, ABC FinTech, Industrial Outdoor Ventures, BHR, Data Nexus, Cut on the Action, and Rare Evil. Whew. It's getting long, Luke.
Yeah, it's getting long and it's getting exciting. So, it's good to be back for another episode. I know it's been some time since our last one in the spring, but we've been busy organizing ourselves, building this summer, and really getting things aligned for what's to come this fall. So, we hope everybody that is tuning in is doing well. You're enjoying your summer months, and really let's dive into things. So, as a quick recap. In our last episode, we featured Derek Meyer of Data Nexus and Zach Gorman of BHR to really help us take a deep dive into the details around data accessibility, especially within the real estate industry. It was great to hear their thoughts on one another's ventures, the changes that are really happening within the world of public records, and some of the barriers to growth for Web3 technology. If you weren't able to tune in, check out our recording on YouTube and leave us a comment, like, share. Let us know what you think and let us know what you'd like us to talk about here in the near future.
Yeah, it was a really fun discussion. I mean, honestly, I think we could have gone for probably another 2 hours if we really wanted to. I mean, those guys were just brilliant. And it was awesome just because I don't know about you, especially with our audience listening. I wasn't super versed and well knowledgeable about the real estate industry and how we're accessing data in it today. To hear kind of their perspective of where we're at, where we're going was just fascinating. And I think we're going to see a lot of that again today because we're going to explore the production and events management industry with not just two guests this time, but three. First time we're about to have three guests on the web series.
Yeah, it's going to be a great episode today, bringing up some very esteemed speakers across both of their avenues. And similarly, this is a topic that I don't really know much about. I know you really don't have much background either, so we're really going to learn a lot today and become educated. So let's get our speakers up here and let's get this thing rolling. So it's my pleasure to first introduce Matt Verkler. Matt is an entrepreneur and filmmaker based in the San Francisco Bay Area. After making commercials and TV show openers in Japan, Matt actually founded Cut on the Action, where he has worked in entertainment, corporate marketing, and communications, just to name a few. Matt really enjoys working in all aspects of media creation and learns something new with each of his projects. Also, he has decades of involvement in Eastern Europe and a working fluency in the Japanese language.
Gosh.
Matt, it's great to have you with us today. Welcome to Bridging the Gap to Web3.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the welcome.
Of course. And now, secondly, I'd like to introduce our two next guests, being Rand McHenry and Wes Parkinson, who are co-founders of Rare Evo. And Rare Evo is a blockchain convention welcoming multi-chain projects, communities, industry leaders, investors, enthusiasts to really come network, educate, and celebrate around the theme of interoperability and the convergence of traditional industry within the Web3 technology. Really something similar that we're doing today, right? Bringing Matt together with your knowledge of Web3, his knowledge of Web2, and seeing where we get to mix. Ran is a seasoned expert with over 15 years of creating extraordinary live events, and Wes brings an unrivaled level of expertise with a decade of global sales and services experiences within the content services industry. Ran, Wes, welcome to the show. We're really excited to have both of you.
Be here.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah, really excited.
And I mean, before we jump into things, got to comment that we're talking about a production episode, and Matt is over here with like an 8K camera, looking HD, pristine, living it up to the reputation. I love to see it, man. I think that's the first time we've seen camera quality of that kind on the series. So I love setting the stage with that.
What can I say? I have to live up to something, right?
I mean, you've got to. You've experienced a lot. And we'll dive into that here in a second. But I got to, ask a little bit about the Rare Network guys. Because first off, thank you for being our first guests where we're going to bring both co-founders on, more than one team member to share perspective of what you all are working on. And you all are working on some pretty cool things in the event management space. Here in the United States, making some waves around Denver, Colorado. Would love to hear more about what your team is doing in Web3 and, what you've accomplished so far and I guess what your future really looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are nearing the 3-year journey as a business. Rand and I essentially started up more so an infrastructure company where we ran a node on a blockchain. And ultimately, there is a very key part in running a stake pool, which is branding a business and a mission around it. And it was enough as is for, I think, me to brush up on my Linux, spin that pool up, ultimately leading to an upgrade where it left us wondering, how can we get this fixed? Soon enough, we were off to Miami for Bitcoin Miami, found some engineers to help us out. Light bulb moment. We all have the proper experience to do an event ourselves. And now we truly know the value from this real experience that kept our operation together and allowed us to actually perfectly time it where we got some funding through that node to then roll over into our events and media production business. So pretty cool origin story and really goes to show the power of in-person events that we plan on discussing here today.
I mean, it's how we got connected to Matt. We quite literally met at Startup Grind's annual summit that I'm assuming Wes and Rand, we're going to have you join us at next year because we all got to do this in person. That's one of the core things about these kind of events is bringing these global communities together. I mean, we would have never crossed paths if we didn't have an opportunity like that. And look what we're going to get ready to do and dive into a really fun discussion today because of it. And so, Matt, I'll toss it over to you. You know, Luke shared a little bit about your global experience working in a variety of different nations, different cultures, working on different projects. Tell us a little bit about Cut on the Action and what you've been doing across the globe and what you've been up to recently.
Cut on the Action was founded in 1997, if I can date myself. So would that be Web 1, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I had come back from Japan, worked in a post-production house for 3 years. And technology was changing very, very rapidly, but no one in the post-production space was seeing the changes. And at some point, it just became too dangerous to stay employed where I was, and nowhere else was adapting. So it was finally time to start my own thing, and thank God I did, because within a couple of years, all those players just disappeared. So started off as a post-production house, got back to my production roots again in a couple of years. We do everything from concept to completion, and we operate in the entertainment space and in the corporate marketing space. And there's always a tension between those two. It's like good and evil, which is which, I don't know. The past 10 years, we've let, I'm not going to call it evil, we'll let lucrative, low-hanging fruit in the corporate marketing space kind of took over, took most of our attention, and we put our entertainment projects on hold. This past year, with all the changes in our world, I mean, our world, first it was COVID, then it was, there's war, there's interest rates, inflation, all this stuff. Corporations are just, they're losing their minds. And so the entertainment space started to look a lot more interesting again. And so now we're getting more balanced. Recently, actually last week, we just did an event in San Francisco where we did all the video support. And then for the event itself, we had a 3-camera shoot. And now we're, cutting all that together into, a promo and social media cuts, etc. Actually working on a music video, if you can believe that. People still do that.
Oh,
back in the 90s, that was kind of the heyday, really. And we did a lot of music videos. Kind of got out of that space for some interesting reasons. But, we still do it on occasion. We're actually getting ready to film a Western in Arizona in the fall.
Oh,
and
man.
I'm doing everything I can not to make certain jokes.
Oh, yeah.
Gallows humor. But you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
We're also getting ready to film an exotic car rally. And that's, what we do, it's amazing because it's always something different. And as you said in the intro, I learned something new on everything. We just did a piece for a biotech accelerator, and all the people involved, it was just astounding to see how smart people in science are getting connected with what they need in finance and business, things that they're not good at, and just coming out with really amazing startups. And we just started a new documentary. Met a guy networking. He finds out what we do, and he's like, "You got to meet my dad. What are you doing on Saturday?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm available on Saturday," so I canceled my Saturday. Go meet his dad, and we start talking. And in 10 seconds, I'm like, "Stop. We need everything you're saying to be on film." So we came back a week later, 3-camera shoot just to start. No other details. It was so important to get started because he's an old gentleman, right? And who knows how long we'll have him, but the story is so compelling. So I feel like we're getting more balanced. On the Web3 / what we're talking about side, this year, again, it's a special year for a lot of people, right? A special in quotes. Uh, but challenges are opportunities. And so we've been out there just figuring out what the hell is going on and where is this going. And I don't think anyone can really say we know where this is going, right? And that's why we're here talking about this. But we've been out really diving into the startup space because I think that's where all the innovations really happening. We have a lot of cybersecurity clients, kind of went to RSA and did that. And then, of course, this last year, Web3, blockchain, et cetera. This year, AI. And but I think that's a good thing for Web3. Right now, everyone's gaga over AI. But that means there's just a lot of stupidity. You see it. Yeah, I think Web3 is now past that stage. So now we can actually do some useful things and, not just be stupid like a few things were a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Where everything was full of hype, everything to the moon. Absolutely.
And that's normal. I mean, we see these patterns repeat throughout at least my life. And the one good, so I'll date myself right now. I'm 54 years old, started really early, but I've seen multiple waves of all of this. And past is prologue to a point, right? We've heard this music before, but now there's new refrains involved. And one thing's for sure, everything is accelerating very quickly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think, Matt, from that, right, it's the, access to information today is just so much more feasible for these different individuals, and they're able to grasp new concepts, really dive in and lean into these new innovations. And Matt, you've already kind of started to touch on this a little bit, right? But with you starting cut on the action in 97, the year I was born, by the way, is
nice.
Not old, really.
You've really seen, these multiple waves of disruptive technology impacting a plethora of different industries, right? You touched on, biotech, documentaries, right? Like you're really behind the scenes, information security behind the scenes of these companies that have been impacted by these different innovations throughout your whole career. So, I want to kind of double click on that for a second. And, I'd love for you to kind of share with us about some of those early technology breakthroughs that you saw, and how did it kind of shift the way that you worked? And how have you taken those lessons learned and applied it to what's going on today?
Okay. Starting kind of speaking globally, stuff we all know, but I think it's good to just remind ourselves briefly. So, beginning of computing, at some point we were dealing with mainframes. My dad had a IBM 360 at work with the cards going, and boy, God forbid, I was like 4 years old at the time. If that stack of cards goes, there goes your program or whatever your memory was. And then mini computers came out, maybe mid 70s, and the PCs, with the Apple, what was it, the Apple II, and all those, the trash 80s, stuff like that. Those were, like for word processing, great, but considered toys. But by say the mid to later 80s, no longer toys, right? And this is how these waves of innovation occur. So my dad, he was a pioneer in all of this stuff. He really looked down on, like PCs, although he used them, of course, because he's not stupid, and so on. He looked down on Macs. It's not a real computer, right? Although he bought a Mac 6 months before he passed away. And so he was always learning new things. But, the cycle of disruptive innovation, especially if you want to see a good description of this, Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, that really encapsulates what this is here's your top, here's the heavy iron, the big stuff, and here's the, it's okay, but it's not really great. And they're on these curves of development. The need curve is more like this. So at some point, this top level curve becomes irrelevant because the lower curve intersects with the need, right? So think about supercomputers, right? So back in the 90s, did a lot of work for companies like Hitachi Data Systems, and they'd have these $20 million, at the time that was a lot of money, these giant systems, and they just do all these amazing things. Well, now your phone could probably do that, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so our what is a computer has changed, and now really with Web3, a computer is all of these platforms distributed across the world, right? And we'll just keep going from there. So that's a general sense. In a specific to us, originally there was analog video and all that kind of stuff. Digital video came out in the mid 80s. We're talking, tape based, most of it.
Yeah.
And each of these machines, maybe they're $500,000, right? And you need a number of them to do anything. And so really to make an editing suite was millions of dollars, just one. And, at some point you had SGI, Silicon Graphics, where it was still a refrigerator size, but maybe it's, $500,000 platform, and you're doing some amazing things. In 97, or actually 98, a year after we started, I saw a PC-based platform. They had rewritten the HAL layer because, Windows was Windows NT. It was okay, but they rewrote the HAL layer and made it the most reliable platform I've ever used in my life. It would run for a year without crashing, and we're just hammering on it. I mean, think about that, right?
Yeah.
When I saw that, I recognized what it was, because that platform was, say, 150,000. You still need other things to work, but it was, let's say 1/3 of the previous price of admission, right? That was 98. Fast forward to 2000, 2001, Final Cut Pro, right?
Oh my gosh, everybody used that.
And in the beginning it was okay, it wasn't great, but you had all these people now who, for very low money, for the computer and the software, could now, the barrier to entry just dropped, honestly, to almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so now your noise level has increased, and the people you're competing with has increased. And the platform I was on, while it was cheap when I started, 3 years later it was no longer cheap. And to stay updated, I had to spend 70 or 80 grand every year and a half to stay current, right?
Gosh.
Yeah.
So at some point I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
what do I do here? When the new stuff, and I think this is directly applicable to Web3 and what we're talking about, it either works for you or it works against you, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and then it's in the multiple waves I've experienced, there's always like a specific project that forces me to, or I allow to force me to go to the new platform. And there's, a period of time where you're like, and so with Final Cut Pro, I was doing things on the road, and that's when I started doing work in Eastern Europe, St. Petersburg, Russia. And, I was on an airplane with 3 Macs networked, trying to meet deadlines while I'm traveling.
It's awesome.
And, but, it forced me to learn this new platform, and it wasn't as good. Clear and simple. The big iron was amazing. It was everything all in one. And I had to do a bunch of things with different programs to make it work, but I could do the same level. I just couldn't do it in front of a client.
Gotcha.
So one other thing that changed was, so in the old days of post-production, especially, your clients would be there. There'd be 10 agency people, right?
Yeah.
And, sometimes there'd be 15 people in the room watching every move you make. But with email and just, the way our world changed, especially in the early 2000s, people just stopped coming, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That combined, no longer did I need that performance in front of people, right? So since I'm offline, yeah, it could be a little more clunky in terms of how it looks, but I'm still accomplishing the same result.
Outcomes. Yeah.
So it was revolutionary. I became a lot more profitable, by using the new tools.
Yeah.
Even
No,
though they weren't as good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fascinating, Matt, of kind of your journey that you've been along, and really what we've seen over this last like 5 to 7 years with Web3 technologies really taking a hold, right? I mean, you've got kind of the main protocols, Bitcoin, Ethereum coming out, early 2010s, mid 2010s, and similarly, right, that barrier to entry was low, but it was still pretty high to like get actually involved on the blockchains and doing things and providing real world value. Fast forward to today, right? And we hear Wes and Rand here being able to go to a conference, find a group of developers, and boom, they've got their team to help them run, the validator on whichever project that they're hoping to use. And so we've really seen a lot of those similarities, right? Of these lowering of barriers to entry, this new technology really taking fold to be able to do similar things, maybe in a little bit more of a clunky way, but still accomplishing that same goal. And so, Rare Evo team, I'm curious to get your perspectives on, how do you see this Web3 technology really integrating and impacting, your events and the production sector that you're focused on? What unique opportunities do they present for event hosts, artists, creators, right, Matt? All of those individuals that you've been interacting with, but now in a whole new way with this new technology. So, Rand, Wes, curious to get your perspectives here on that.
There's so many different ways Web3 technology is creeping in. Literally every crack, every facet of our business, Web3 technology is creeping in. And I will say nothing takes away from live events and meeting with people in real person and getting things done. But there's so many business, whether it be NFTs that replace collector's items, whether that be a concert poster or a ticket to our event per se, or used as a pass to get discounts on merchandise or entry to other events, kind of as like a private club as well. Entry that way. We're decentralized streaming our main stage on Theta Network. So even the delivery of content online from the live event as well, all the way down. We're also using Web3 and decentralization when it comes to our ticket provider as well in the future. So there's so many different facets there for folks to for it to creep in for content creators and how they get their content out there in events and how they're doing their ticketing and collectibles from the events and things like that. And event organizers to look at kind of bringing Web3 in, as well as payment processing. We've had people purchase tickets to our event in cryptocurrency on our website, and some of those fees being lower and faster and getting to us instantly instead of getting processed through a payment provider like Square or Apple Pay or Google Pay or Visa or MasterCard, or God forbid American Express, where they take quite a hefty chunk out of each payment. It's just kind of yeah, I love them. I do love them. It's my favorite card that I have, so I have to give them.
You have to say that, right? Because this is recorded.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It is my favorite card. But yeah, just solving issues like that for live events, it gets very interesting, and I think there's more of that to come as we get further and further.
And to add to that, not even really just the production itself, day of interactive experiences, collectibles, taking payments, but also how to fund and keep ownership of your business by utilizing Web3 grants and other fundraising mechanisms, whether it be that NFT collection, to get that liquidity to allow, Web3 owners and founders to, preserve their ownership of their business for a longer time as they evolve into the years. So I would say all aspects of business at some point will be affected. And it is one of those things where, totally going back what Matt said here, is just taking on the risk of adopting too early, adopting too late, and the time and resources it does take to experiment with the new technology. I think there's risk in it, and from our side, we've taken a nice gradual approach, but we're so eager to add all of those elements year by year.
Yeah, I'd say technology is deflationary.
I like that.
As we move forward, technology is meant to make things easier and cheaper.
Yeah.
Just like ChatGPT, like I've been using AI we've used it to write contracts, to email blast, things that would take us hours to assemble and grammar check, and probably multiple humans would need to put their eyes on. We've been able to knock out relatively quickly using new technology. So that's helped accelerate us in that we're a small team.
Yeah.
There's maybe 3 or 4 of us on the Rare Evo team, and to accomplish what we would be doing, it would take a much larger team to, fulfill all those tasks.
Well, one thing I want to hit on too, in tossing it back to the Rare Evo guys, was something that Matt talked about. In his experience going through disruptive technologies and interacting with them, he made the comment, some of them felt like toys in the beginning, and they're no longer toys anymore. And I think that really stuck with me personally, because I can reflect on so many different things that I've interacted with in Web3 so far that in my first impressions I would have looked at as toys. Still could probably look at them as toys somewhat, but now we're starting to hit these next levels of evolution and maturity in some of these solutions and some of the value that they're bringing to the real world. Is there anything you guys can share from what you've seen that maybe you've interacted with in Web3 that felt like a toy the first time you were experiencing? Maybe it was an NFT. And, the way that you're looking at that technology or that solution now, has it evolved? Is there anything that you can reflect on? I'll toss that to you too, Rand.
So much. I mean, just an NFT and a poster and a profile picture, to gaming and how people are gaming these days and all of that, to, even decentralized finance and some of the ways I'm, saving assets and able to borrow against them on the blockchain is extremely interesting. So I'll say, it's definitely a lot. And I had a real estate mentor one time in the past, and flipping houses, he always said, follow the artists and the creatives, because they're the ones on the cutting edge that play with things before there's a real use case for it.
I like that. Yeah.
And so I've always, that struck a chord with me. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, kind of go to where the artists are, and that's a great part of town to start working on yourself.
Yeah.
To create money. And I've looked in that through technology and all my investments, like, where are the artists and creatives playing around, and they'll find a use case, trust. Yeah. And I've seen a lot of that in Web3 and blockchain, and you see those use cases kind of really coming to fruition over the years.
Wes, anything that you kind of experienced as well? Brand, I have to say, I've seen a lot of the same.
Yeah, I've got quite a big physical art collection, and just that kind of first transaction of a fine art piece on the blockchain, and that, I don't know, the feeling of not having something physical but still appreciating it for what it is, is an interesting one to get through. And I think also, like, going back to, does it feel like a toy? I feel there is this entire nostalgic vibe to Web3, where it's as if we're, this third version of the internet, going through all of the like pixelated art that's coming out now that costs more than, some Warhols cost. There's obviously that going back to your inner child, and what strikes a chord with our generation for those folks that, have a lot of crypto to spend and want to put it back into the ecosystem and support artists. So there's something, childish and toy-like about, I think, that breaking into the NFT experience, coming from the traditional world as a collector, at least.
I mean, I think NFTs are the best example of the technology that feels like a toy the first time you go into it. And then the deeper you learn about the technology, the more you realize, oh, the application is huge. And I know we're going to talk about that in some of the deeper questions here. But I want to toss it over to Matt for a second. Matt, you're hearing us talk a lot of these, buzzwords or different terms in Web3. What's your team's perception of this all? And how are you all looking at the impact of it on your work today?
Very good question. Ultimately, we are storytellers, and I like to say that what I do is 50% art, 50% science, 50% business. And so Web3, it's just another technology, another tool. And I really had to, a lot of this stuff happens without me really thinking about it consciously. I'm kind of instinctual as I, adopt and evolve. But so this webinar has definitely helped me think more consciously about what's going on out there.
Yeah.
And as I did that, I think I'm not sure how much we're seeing yet.
Yeah.
Definitely in my odyssey out there in the startup world, and also figuring out, my business, we need to pivot because things are changing. The bottom end with AI and all that, and this has been happening for a long time, but now it's supercharged. You push a button and voila, something is made that looks pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not as good, but if people don't care about the difference, what does it matter, right? So we're working on how do we stay relevant moving forward? And so as far as Web3 goes, I think Netflix, streaming, etc., has done to the movie industry and television industry what Apple did to the music industry 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of devastating, right? And the music industry basically now, where they make their money is live concerts, right?
Yeah.
Because as you say, technology can be deflationary. In the movie industry, they're wrestling with this, and even Netflix is wrestling with this because, okay, you pay your monthly, and you watch Netflix. Well, things are really moving towards ad-supported content. So even Netflix is going to be going that way. They're already playing with it, which ironically is back to kind of broadcast television, right?
Yeah. Kind of is, really is.
Yeah.
Commercial break.
So in today's world, a lot of things that content owners and piracy is a big issue.
Yep.
And if you're doing ads, for ad supported content to work, the ads need to be worth something, right? And so is someone actually watching that, or is it a bot or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think Web3 is really going to help in this regard. Hopefully, while retaining privacy. I mean, that's a nice double trick, right?
Exactly.
And also the decentralization aspect. I love the idea of that because, power tends to corrupt, and power wants more power, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that with Web 2. Web 1 was pretty decentralized, right? Of course, it was static pages and it wasn't really interactive. Web 2, that's where you saw these, massive powers emerge, whether it was Facebook or Amazon, which interestingly, it's definitely Web 2 mixed with brick and mortar. They really figured out how to, they figured out what very few people did in the late 90s. The old rules did not go away. We just now combine them with the new stuff. So I think ad-supported content, who is really watching, I think Web3 will help with that. Instead of just having a Netflix subscription, like when you say you buy a movie on Amazon, right? what happens when Amazon is no longer supporting that movie, right? That's kind of a kick in the pants because I spent whatever, 10, 15 bucks.
Yeah.
So NFT, the NFTization of a user's relationship with the content.
Yeah.
I see some really good things and really good opportunities for someone to figure this out, right? And then in other areas that are specific to my industry, so your scripts, right? Think of,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so right now with the script, each page has a big thing printed with the recipient's name. So if it gets, we're talking like, physical pages of scripts, right? And that's kind of the way that they protect it. So that if there is a leak, we know where the leak came from.
Yep.
Web3 blockchain, obviously, great solution for that, and a way to, protect your script, your IP. I'm not really seeing solutions there yet. They might exist, but I'm not seeing them yet. Great opportunity. But I think overall, Web3, it's going to change. It is changing and will change how we interact with everything. And it's just going to feel natural. And through that, it will bleed into us. But it has to be seamless for it to be widely adopted.
Absolutely. You cannot think that you're on the blockchain and interacting with it while you're using it. You just have to think, I'm logging into something and getting the objective done, whatever that is. And one thing that you talked about there when it comes to this kind of like proof of view is what it's been called in the space, for identifying, is there, a bot actually looking at this ad, or is this a real person? That's been something that's been really interesting to Luke and I and our team as we've been exploring. And I know there's some companies, some first movers that have made some traction in that space, Veracity being one of them. I think Vera is their token. They've created a technology for quite literally this. But I love your point because it shows that it hasn't necessarily reached the masses yet. People don't know that this is out here yet. They haven't seen the use cases that are reaching headlines. They're like, solved X and saved, the company Y or the person Y. That's what I think is coming. Now that we've been playing around in this playground, we found a bunch of toys that were really cool. We found those toys that are actually going to turn into real solutions. And those solutions are turning into real world applications. I know we hang out in the VeChain ecosystem a lot. And that's one of the places we're seeing a lot of those applications start to turn into realities. And it gets me really excited. But there's so much to do. But I think that we thankfully, or I shouldn't say thankfully, we're given opportunities where we're starting to see this get accelerated. And I look at it as one of those opportunities is coming from the hybrid environment. The pandemic pushed the world into this digital connective environment where, hey, if we're not going to be in person, we're going to still find a way to build a relationship, get connected, and interact with one another. And so you had this huge push for hybrid environments happen over the last 3-4-ish years. And I'd love to toss this over to the Rare Evo team. Obviously, I think Web3 technology is going to play a part in helping this interaction between people, communities, and these, event producers in these hybrid environments. What are some of the things that you think can be possible with Web3 technology that just couldn't have been possible before with, some of the Web2 teams when it comes to increasing engagement of these hybrid environments and, just these events?
We've got an amazing metaverse being built by Singularity, where people that can't make it to the event live can still mingle at the event online, see exactly what everybody else is seeing, walk around the expo floor digitally, see all the booths, talk to AI chatbots about each of the projects, and also meet and chat with other people in that metaverse. And that's something that was never possible 15 years ago when I started. And it's really fun to see like really amazing creatives built out to share with the community. Anything on your end, Wes, that you can think of?
Yeah, I think a lot of like the proof of participation elements, and how people can go around in an expo hall and engage with booths and really instantaneously get something in return rather than your, proprietary barcoded kind of in-house system that's isolated to the event producers only. So having a platform that really allows for your exhibitors to incentivize people to come over, claim an NFT, and then actually be able to get that from our side to gauge what gets the most interactive and attraction. And then on their side as well to gain that customer base. Obviously, there's that through email, but it's, I would say, a little more clunky, and there's not that concept, or like there's not that element of ownership involved in that.
It's better than giving somebody a squishy ball or a pen.
Yes, with your brand on it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That you end up most likely throwing away by the time you get home anyways.
Got so many. But I think that's really interesting, that you guys bring all of that up, because again, I think that we're seeing a lot of the same. And the one thing that really is sticking out to me is one of the things that you said, Rand, that idea of the metaverse, where you can log in, post conference and go interact with some of these booths and walk around in the booth and interact with a person there that is an AI. That's something that just was never possible before. Sure, I can think of virtual environments that I've logged into, and you go to the company's page and there's a text box. You can chat in an open text box. Like literally seeing an avatar make hand motions, talk, and point to things and walk around the booth and show you things. That's wild. Because I can think of so many times, like even Matt, I'm sure you can think of it, being at Startup Grind recently and being like, ooh, that was a really cool company. I just don't have time for that. But you can go now log in on your computer when you get home, and you can go walk over to that booth, go walk around and explore like you were there.
And still ask it questions.
Yes. It's wild.
And it's infinite if it needs to be. So, post Rare Evo, if you've got a friend's wedding, the next weekend you can log in and kind of relive the experience. We could have the stream going on at the exact same time every day. So yeah, there's an endless amount of ways, I think, that you can get added exposure and relationships being built through a metaverse. And then of course, having something where those transactions are kept open and kind of shared with all involved.
Love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to, Matt, your theme of like lowering that barrier to entry, right? It's like this allows you to really exponentially tell the stories that are going on in these live events and reach this global audience that maybe didn't have the availability to travel to wherever the location is at, but still really gain the value, build the relationships. And we like the saying of your network is your net worth. And I feel like the metaverse and these different interactive immersive environments are just going to help to increase that at a level that we haven't seen before. Right. And of course, with these technologies, there's successes that are huge and great, but there's also challenges and, things that we learn from trying new innovations and really being on that bleeding edge. And so, Matt, I'm curious through your years, right? I'm sure you've seen those ebbs and flows in the markets, huge successes, learning experiences. What type of lessons have you learned about embracing and adapting these new technologies, and what could you help share for some of our audiences that are maybe a little bit hesitant about trying this new innovation?
In the beginning, it's crazy.
Yes, it is.
And
it's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I think done. On to the next one.
In the Web3/blockchain world, I mean, could we say the beginning is like crypto and kind of abusive NFT or so? And that's not even, one aspect we're talking as things being toys, but also things as being kind of where you get all this stupid money, stupid attention.
Yes.
It was called irrational exuberance in the financial world 20 years ago, right? And that's normal, right? That's and we're seeing that with AI right now. And lots of useful things are going, but everyone and their dog this year, oh, AI this, AI that, right? I think it's very good that the Web3 world, I think it's pretty much been through that. And now we're getting to where things can be thoughtfully worked out. And so for people worried about adopting things, yeah, that crazy, wild, unpredictable era is just going to happen. And
Yeah.
early adopters can be can lose big time, but some become the giants of the future. That right after that early wave, which is where I think we are, this is where things get really focused and useful. And Wes and Rand, we're seeing what you're doing. I mean, this is very practical stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see, I mean, an NFT of this being worth $69 million, it's just
Stretch. Maybe it gets access to space exploration. I don't know.
It's market. It's a market thing.
Yeah.
But that, now we're getting to where, so I'm thinking of an NFT, tokens as a way for people to connect with my content, right?
Yep.
And I think that will help me get value from my IP and help them connect better with it.
Yeah.
Ironically, as you were Rand and Wes, as you were describing what you're doing in the event space, it made me think of the early days of DVDs, right? So DVDs had special content.
Yeah.
Now with streaming, we really don't see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a way,
Those
we're
were the
not.
good old days.
Oh,
Right.
The
Yeah.
DVD menu screen.
the
Yeah,
bonus.
but I mean, making special features. I mean, this was where you see behind the scenes and all this stuff, and even had web links for stuff. I would like to get back to that deeper engagement,
Mm-hmm.
and really, and Rand and Wes, what you're talking about, creating communities, right? And for my content, I see Web3 as a way to build a community, both during production and after its release. And the deeper engagement I have with my audience and vice versa, the better for everyone.
Yeah, and Matt, on that topic, real quick, we listened to this really interesting speaker at Startup Grind. By the name is Simon Hudson, and he was talking about exactly what you're referencing around how do you create content but have ownership through NFTs, and then be able to share it with brands and have them be able to show that on your behalf, right? And then you are like an owner of that brand because they're utilizing your content and it shows that it's yours, but you've given the rights to that, company or brand to utilize it. I think the example that he gave was like Red Bull, for instance. At a Red F1 event, there's something along the lines of like 9 million pictures and videos that are taken throughout the whole event. But how do you aggregate that all to be underneath this brand's image and have them tell the story and reward those who are talking about it and preaching about it and like living to the mission, vision, value of these companies? And so that's what I really think this technology helps to do, right? It helps to distribute that ownership. It really helps to allow us as users and consumers to participate more within the value creation at the end of the day. So it's really interesting.
And get something from that. When you're
Right.
with, the users can get tangible benefits, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that's the most interesting, going back to like the bonus footage DVD days. I can think of like, oh, you've got one of the actors that's narrating or commenting and pausing the movie and being like, so this is what actually happened during this scene. Or you think back of what is it, Django, where Leo DiCaprio, actually cuts his hand on the glass, and it's the whole ongoing joke that anytime you're watching it, you go, did you know that actually happens?
Right.
Having that ability to interact as an audience again would be wild. Like I couldn't imagine going to see, Oppenheimer that came out this weekend, and I've got an NFT of all of a sudden the character, Cillian Murphy, who's playing Oppenheimer, and because of that, I can go interact and say I went and saw the movie, and now when I go home and log in and show that I saw the movie, submit my ticket stub or whatever, I get a bonus footage that shows me Cillian Murphy talking about one of the scenes from the movie.
It's
like, it's incredible. It's new engagement.
It's an incentive for you to actually go see the movie, right?
Yeah.
So that's good for the owners of the content, and it's good for you because you get all this stuff. And then maybe, as you contribute, like, people who attended the event, took pictures of the Red Bull or whatever, as you contribute, you get other kinds of rewards.
Yeah, I actually believe Ticketmaster's adopting a similar approach where maybe not so much for ticket stubs or just processing the tickets themselves, because there's so many, transactions per second required. But, like I said, going in gradually and more so adopting the digital collectible aspect that then could give someone, a concert goer, a, backseat pass to the making of the tour and the production of the tour and everything that went into it. So I do think that's probably one of the first cases of a real big name. I believe they did Avenged 7 or Avenged Sevenfold, the metal band. So they already have that going. And I think it's just the technology needs to basically be able to handle that amount of transactions to take it to the use case that everybody assumes it's going to be used for.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think we've really kind of focused in on like the benefits of all of this technology, right? And Wes and Rand, you've already hit on, you're starting to maybe leverage NFTs as tickets for your events. You're utilizing these POAPs or proof of authentication protocols to then document that. What are some challenges that have arose in kind of your exploration and implementation of these technologies, and how have you combated them?
We have a joke saying in our group called, "That's going to take some development." So
I'm gonna steal that one.
Anytime somebody's got an idea, we noticed our developer, like, he would be like, "That's going to take some development," and that's just dollar signs in our mind, and time too. So like implementing NFT ticketing and implementing, NFTs to our login, to our backend site we already have, and kind of getting from Web 2.0 to 2.5 and 3.0, there's a lot that goes into that on the back end. And I like to tell a lot of people all the time, we're like building the plane while we're flying it. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and some of them aren't always get done when you think they are. And also the end goal all the time as well. So, but it's definitely a challenge, a fun one, being on the cutting edge. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think there can definitely be a bit of a can of worms effect. I want to say yes to everyone. And we get probably like, I don't know, we probably had 15 to 20 companies with POAP solutions and gamifying how your event can go this, that, and the other. And it's like, you got to weigh who you say yes and who you say no to. And it would be lovely if there was all that, but then there'd be an oversaturation of that. And there's like, 20 different options for an attendee. There needs to be a guided experience. So this time around, we are working with a team called Claimable, who has geotagged physical art pieces that allow you to mint that piece as long as you're within a certain proximity of the piece. So that was like cool. The one we're just inching by, right? And adopting probably like one a year from a third party, and then focusing on our in-house development as well to build our solutions that we can own and add to our IP, which will be how we interact, how we allow those past attendees to interact with that digital collectible and then get something rewarded for the next year of each event. Not finalized yet, but we do have a pretty cool setup where any attendee can claim a POAP. And then we also give out VIP gold tokens to our, like, physical tokens to our VIP holders. All attendees will actually get like a digital version of that. There will be a painter, a live painter by the name of Brendan O'Connell in our expo hall. And he'll actually be painting the piece that is revealed after the event. And that digital token will turn into the art piece itself. and be a keepsake for everyone who wants to have a fond memory of the event, as well as a new piece of artwork. And then what will that artwork actually provide for the future? Possibly access to our NFT collection that is associated to the tickets for next year's event. So we've got some things to debut at the event, and a little bit of a spoiler there, but that's the route we're taking, and we're simplifying it, believe it or not, compared to what we did last year. So nice, not so much of a can of worms, something we can handle in the next 30 days, and also promote for next year's event and how to utilize it further.
God, that's so cool. That is so cool. I guess, just kind of building on that Rare Evo team, we've been talking a lot about all of these technologies, the impacts we're seeing. I've got to ask, you guys have any predictions for what you're seeing over the next decade? In terms of, hey, this is where we see some of the big Web3 technologies, or even companies and specific teams making an impact, and where we see it going. Any bold statements you want to make?
I think there will definitely be like more of an appreciation towards digital art. I don't think digital artists had a way to monetize their art outside of like the commercial space. Yeah. You didn't see people selling thumb drives of their Photoshop JPEGs back in the day. It was all print. Yeah. And then, from like a videographer perspective, or a 3D artist that's animated, how do you sell a single piece? That really just did not exist. And I think that there is quite a lot of gatekeeping in the art world. And it hasn't got there where those like upper echelon of art collectors are really like focusing in on that. I think that's the new money, new art collector mostly. So I think when you see the traditional art world and the digital art world actually kind of accept each other, I'm no aficionado when it comes to this, but like for the longest time, I know like undeveloped film, right? It could be seen as a way of art. But it wasn't ever accepted by like the gatekeepers of high art. And so it never really got a ton of value as it should have, because those are like relics of photographers that have never actually developed that photo. Like some of these are undeveloped, right? So it's just an interesting kind of concept, and how long will that take? I don't know. But I think it's definitely getting there, and it's giving the opportunity for artists to survive and not rely on more so like commercial work or working for a large production house for more so just the movies.
I like that. And before Rand, you jump in, I think we're already seeing some of that happen in the Web3 space, where kind of those gatekeepers of saying like, oh, this can or cannot be are starting to break down. And I look specifically at Bitcoin, with ordinals. I think the whole Bitcoin community for the longest time, as NFTs were thriving, were like, screw that. That is a joke. That doesn't make any sense. This is all of your JPEG monkey pictures and that's it. But now we're starting to see ordinals show up on Bitcoin, and people are starting to see the application of, what a similar technology is bringing to them, and how it's starting to develop these communities, this sense of ownership. And, you're even looking at things like, oh, this type of number block is now more important than another because it was the quote unquote, pizza block that people bought that 10,000, Bitcoin for a pizza way back in the day. Like that type of stuff is starting to happen in these micro communities in Web3, and it's breaking down, I think, at a fast pace. Because once the dominoes fall, it's hard to stop them. And I think that you're starting to see that in this digital art space. So I'm glad you commented on that. Just wanted to, elaborate. Rand, anything else to add?
Yeah, I see it like where Wes is coming from, kind of on the art and creative side, but I see it creeping in a lot of infrastructure and a lot of different facets of life where just like the internet or computing power, people are focused on what is it going to do now. And I think in the future, a lot of it's going to be running the back end infrastructure of a lot of things where people don't really even notice it's there, whether that be or NFTs used as deeds for your house or cards easily tradable with clear, concise, vision on title and ownership throughout the past, I think is super important. I'm tired of paying for title insurance when I flip houses, or waiting 2+ weeks for title insurance to come back clean, even though it might not be, and I still need to get it insured anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I see there's lots of places for the technology to creep in, and I think it'll be in our day-to-day lives before people even know it, that they're using it.
I like that last comment there. I think they're not even going to realize they're using it. I really do. And I think that's when, again, everyone talks about mass adoption, what's going to cause it. It's that nobody's going to realize blockchain is actually the vehicle making all of these outcomes happening. They're just going to be like, oh, this is better, faster, cheaper.
Exactly.
And so, Matt, I got to toss it over to you. What are some of your perspectives on this? Where are you seeing Web3 going in this production industry? Do you see teams, embracing this type of technology here soon?
Oh, 100%. And like we've said, I think it will be second nature. And the key here, I mean, security. And I think these technologies are a double-edged sword. It can enhance security, but it could also reduce security. So the devil is in the details. But I think it will enhance it for sure, and make it simpler and easier, and increase the community of not just the core creators, but the audience will be able to collaborate in a useful way, not a noisy way, right?
Mhm.
And I have a number of things listed for takeaways, and maybe it's not time for that yet, but
Go into that next. So you're beating me by one question.
before we get there, how about this for Web3 and blockchain politics? Fundraising for politics, and then of course elections.
Mhm.
I think
Election makes so much sense.
it's been what we've experienced the last, say, 23 years. It's come on, we need to get this right. Shouldn't be so crazy and opaque. I mean, we need to. So I think one of the promises of Web3 is, democratization and openness while protecting privacy, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I think this is, for me, it's the goal of Web3, to be able to get all of those things. So we're safe, but we can be open. Censorship. Is Web3 a barrier against censorship? It should be, right?
Mhm.
And as a society, do we want that? Can we handle that? I hope so.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Those are, you asked for predictions. I think politics it'll come out of nowhere, and we'll go, okay, now that makes sense. If our leadership, we need leaders at the national and global stage where people understand this stuff, not just, I mean, they don't have to understand the nuts and bolts per se. They need to understand the ramifications, what's possible, and, stay away from the negatives. So we need stronger leadership there.
Yeah.
I could not agree more with that. I think the amount of times Luke and I have talked about that is too much. And I mean, when you look at just the simple things of politics, I mean, one of the biggest lines of the last election was the election was stolen, and nobody can necessarily prove it. And it's one of those things that if everything's on chain, it's verified, it's immutable. You can't fake that data or go and edit it afterward. It's there, and we can see it, and it's public. Like that's crazy.
While still preserving an individual voter's privacy, because we need to be able to vote how we want to vote without, someone canceling us or burning our house down or something.
Yeah, you voted for that person, so all of a sudden, you're written off, you're canceled. Absolutely. And I think that's really interesting that you bring that up. But anything else you're going to add there?
Yeah, and that's the dysfunction of our society with politics is things get so polarized. But this is not it's not a partisan issue, right? Because both sides, depending on the election, they think or say the election was stolen, right?
Mhm.
Both sides, or all sides, I don't want to say both, because I think it's really, there's also a middle. Anyone who's, a normal person just wants it to be done properly.
It's exhausting.
And I think Web3 can accomplish that.
Yeah, and I really think that's the next wave, right? I mean, when you look at kind of the hype cycle and how these innovative technologies really become that next level of mass adoption, is you kind of need to have some of those big disruptions happen, and then people really focus on those real world use cases, right? And being able to prove how this technology is going to not only benefit today, but be here for the long term. And to your point, Matt, I'm a privacy professional, and that's my number one thing about blockchain is how are you going to protect my identity, and how am I going to make sure that what I put out there, whether it's a transaction or whether it's a communication, that I remain anonymous sometimes, and the security behind that, right, is really where the next focus is going to be. I think you're seeing that with regulation trying to come around it to put a little bit of guardrails to try to limit this wild west that we're really in. But also not stifle innovation, right? It's this double-edged sword, like you said. How do we let this kind of run to create value, but also be within the fine tunings of what we really need today, and into the future. So it's going to be interesting. I think it starts to disrupt a lot of the different industries we're involved in, that we're privy to, and really it's just an exciting time.
If I may, the intersection of Web3 and AI, in my industry, right now the writers are on strike, the Screen Actors Guild just went on strike. Normally I hate these strikes because they destroy some really good properties. They destroy series because, a hiccup in production and boom, that something you loved is gone. But it's the right time for them to make their stand, because of all these new issues. And so as far as Web3 goes, AI definitely will interact and supercharge. It's also a threat, right? Because with the power of AI, the blockchain can be less secure, and who knows, right? But as we wrap our heads around that, it's happening. We can't stop it. So let's figure out how to use it. And
and I think, Matt, to that point, the big announcement this week, from the crypto side is the release of WorldCoin, right, which is actually created by Sam Altman, who is the co-creator of ChatGPT, right? And the whole premise behind this WorldCoin is that it's one, privacy first, right? So you're completely anonymized, but you're able to operate on it like you're on the internet today. And instead of any of these companies being able to, take your personal information and follow your almost every movement across web pages, right? It helps to preserve that, and it helps to give that back to the individual owners, and you make your decision of what you want to do. So I think we're starting to get there. I think there's a lot of innovators out there that are trying to focus on these problems and solve it using these innovative technologies. And so with that, I know we're kind of up on our 60 minutes here together, and I think we covered a lot of great information, great anecdotes and stories and background information of where we come from, where we're at today, where we're going to go in the future. So as we're kind of wrapping up, Matt, I'm going to direct this first to you, as it seems like you kind of got your takeaways already ready. But what would you give to our audience that's listening now live, as well as those that are going to tune in on the YouTube recording? What are some takeaways that you have for them that they can say, yes, this is what I need to do, and what I can start to do tomorrow? What type of insights would you like to provide to them?
These are kind of higher level. So, as we wrap up, we've talked about a lot of specifics, and the specifics are evolving and they're changing. But I think at the high level, one, I think for Web3, the fad phase is over. And we can partially thank AI for that, right?
They took over the new attention.
Right. And so now I think it's time for companies and individuals to get into Web3 because now we're getting into a mature, useful phase. So that's a very good thing for Web3, I think. Um, I would also say never discount human nature, because that's always going to underpin and affect everything. And a lot of times technologists, they think, oh, we make this new technology and it will create a utopian society that's wonderful and amazing and stuff. And as long as humans are involved, we're imperfect. We have various motives. Actually, AI hallucinates, so that's we'll see how that evolves. But human nature is always part of this, and I think for better and for worse, just keep that in mind as you make everything, and think of the ramifications of what you're doing. So many times, technologists, it's like, oh, we can make this cool thing, and that's awesome, but should we, right?
Yep.
I also think the principles of economics will continue. In the late 90s, Business Week, I read that religiously every week for a decade. And they're all like, oh, it's the new economy. All the rules are gone. And I'm just going like, I was in my 20s at the time. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. But they're like, oh, with everything's different. No, these are modifiers. But the underlying rules of economics will continue. And it's, it's part of how humans interact. I think Web3 is a double-edged sword. Opportunities along with peril, like anything, right? And we're in a period of great change, and change is scary, can be dangerous, but change is opportunity. And, in the investing world, boy, this year, people are just like, they're so afraid of everything. But I think now is the time, certainly in Web3 and in a greater sense as well. This is when the winners are being built. And it's also, we're separating the wheat from the chaff. We're weeding out, the things that need to be weeded out.
The get rich quick schemes.
Yeah, the people that stay in, the people that double down, and can make that happen. So this is the people here right now with us. We will create the future.
Love that.
Absolutely. I love those takeaways, Matt, and I think it's really meaningful across each of them. And so, Wes, Rand, what are some of your takeaways from today's conversations and some lasting insights that you'd like to leave our audience with as we conclude our episode today?
Yeah, I think this technology is here to stay. I always like to say, the day I stop learning is the day I die.
Yep.
So staying on the cutting edge and always the greatest tools. I'm not afraid of AI. I've been playing with it for weeks now. I just wrote an entire training manual with it over the past few days that probably would have taken me weeks to put together, and multiple minds overseeing it because I'm horrible at grammar and spelling. But with ChatGPT, I don't have to worry about any of that. So I think it's always important to play on the cutting edge and be like the artists and creatives, and not necessarily have an objective. But I don't think new technology will replace you as long as you're the one playing with the new tool, and learning how to use the new tool, because that's all they are. They're tools. So awesome. I think that would be my wrap up.
Yeah, I would just say that I believe, sitting here with all you, I mean, from a startup perspective, Web3 welcomes a lot of potential. I don't think every single business model is well suited for Web3. However, maybe the lone warrior trying to make an idea come to life and step inside to kind of an alternative tech realm that's emerging. You may have an advantage, you may have a disadvantage, but it's definitely worth taking a look into, because you're not bound by your physical location, your social status. even what you look like, because you can stay completely anonymous in some cases. So I think it welcomes opportunity that wasn't there before in the internet bubble. You don't have to be in a certain area of the country. You don't have to have ties to funding, and you can wiggle your way through to build a software protocol that, in the traditional sense, usually takes a lot more, institutions and third parties to rely on to make it happen. And we're definitely a product of that ourselves, and proud to be. So I think Matt has it right. There's been a shakeout of people that had their mind on, number go up, and those folks in a bear starting to hopefully turn around, either have gone away and are never coming back, but the strong have survived and will continue to do so. So that's kind of just how we see our business, make it through a couple more years. And the next thing, you have a brand, you're on top, and you're on top in the midst of a new wave of attention from the masses. So,
I mean, gentlemen, I don't think I could have summed it up much better. And I can't say thank you enough, just because, you talk about these artists, these creators, these visionaries, and, innovators that are help leading these spaces. You guys are quite literally those individuals. And we can't thank you enough for helping share your journeys, your experiences with us, to get a peek into what it looks like to be in your world and have some takeaways that we can apply to our own. I know the chat was definitely a little lively in this conversation. And, one thing that really stuck out to me was when we were kind of talking about these artists and creators. And somebody wrote, "Artists are the frontier of human discovery." And I think we're seeing a lot of those artists discover a lot of incredible things here in Web3. Whether they're playing around with an NFT, whether they're creating a meme coin or whatever, or building some new community. We've got a lot of people creating beautiful things here, things that maybe started as toys, but are starting to become solutions, and things that we are going to see impact our lives for the long term. So Matt, Wes, Rand, again, thank you for an incredible episode. This was phenomenal. And we cannot wait to follow your journeys.
Yep.
For everybody listen back, you better go check out Rare Network and cut on the action, because I can almost guarantee you this is not going to be the last time you will hear from them. Congratulations on what you've accomplished, team, and we are excited for the future. Thanks again. And Chris, we'll out to you to close things out.
I sure will. And there are a couple of things that, Matt, that I really liked what you said. It resonated on so many levels for me. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last 7-8 years is studying ancient philosophy, going back in history and asking myself the question, well, is today really that different than what was 2,000 years ago?
Yeah.
And going to your point about economics,
human condition,
the fundamental laws of economics existed 2,000 years ago. They exist today, and until we move into an alternative universe someplace where no rules apply, those are pretty much going to be the standards by which we're all going to be measured. So
somebody might build a metaverse like that, Chris. I wouldn't put it past them.
I absolutely do. But then Rand, something that you said as well, and that is that you were trained by, or you learned from a very experienced investor about following certain trends, following the
creators, following the artists and the creators.
Yes, the artists and the creators. And I thought, that is just a beautiful way to sum up someone keeping an eye on where things are going. And then the third thing that I took away is, everything goes through a cycle. Doesn't matter what it is. And to everyone's point, that we've been through these cycles more frequently, and I think it's because technology is enabling us to work through these cycles. But now we're at the bottom on many levels. We're at that valley of disillusionment, and it's from here that the real productive long-term value creation begins. And gentlemen, thank you very much. This is once again an incredible episode. Thank you all for your individual collaboration and participation in this. Luke and Connor, thank you very much for another outstanding episode. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, as they say, it's in the can and it's a wrap.